Breaking bad habits. The brain science of letting go. Have you ever tried to quit a bad habit? Maybe it's smoking. Maybe it's biting your nails. Maybe it's scrolling on your phone until 2 a.m., even when you swore you'd sleep early. You tell yourself, this is the last time. You mean it. You're determined. But a few hours later, there you are again, lighting another cigarette, biting another nail, or scrolling through TikTok. And then comes the guilt, the frustration, the whisper in your head, maybe I just don't have enough willpower. But what if I told you willpower is not the whole story? What if habits aren't about weakness at all, but about how your brain wires itself? This is the story of Mark, a man who smoked for 20 years, failed to quit 7 times, and finally discovered the science of breaking habits, not by fighting his brain, but by rewiring it. Hookmark used to joke that he didn't wake up in the morning until he lit his first cigarette. The ritual was automatic. Roll out of bed, shuffle to the kitchen, coffee in one hand, cigarette in the other. The first inhale wasn't even enjoyable anymore, it was just expected. When his daughter was born, Mark swore he'd quit. He didn't want his baby girl growing up around smoke. He threw away his pack, told himself, this time I'm done. But 2 days later, stressed and restless, he found himself at a gas station, buying another pack. The cycle repeated. Quit, relapse, quit, relapse. Mark began to believe he was hopeless, until one day he met a therapist who explained something that changed everything. You don't have a smoking problem. You have a brain wiring problem. And wiring can be changed. How habits hijack the brain. To understand Mark's struggle, we need to peek inside the brain. Habits are controlled by a part of the brain called the basal ganglia. Think of it as the autopilot system. Once a habit is formed, the basal ganglia takes over, allowing you to do things automatically without much thought. That's why you can drive home without remembering every turn, or brush your teeth while thinking about something else. Habits save energy, but they also trap us. Here's the loop. Cue, a trigger. Mark's cue, morning coffee. Routine, the behavior. Light up a cigarette. Reward, the brain's good job signal, usually dopamine. Relief, satisfaction, calm. Every time Mark repeated this loop, the neural pathway grew stronger. It was like carving a trail through a forest. At first, the path was faint, but after 20 years, it was a highway. That's why quitting felt impossible. His brain wasn't asking for a cigarette. It was running its autopilot program. The myth of willpower. Mark used to think he just needed more self-control. But here's the truth. Habits don't break because you try harder. They break because you rewire the loop. Willpower is like using a stick to block a flood. It might work for a moment, but eventually the water wins. To truly change, you need to reroute the river. The first step, awareness. Mark's therapist gave him a notebook and said, every time you feel the urge to smoke, write down the cue. Where are you? What time is it? What are you feeling? At first, Mark thought it was silly, but after a week, patterns emerged. Morning coffee triggered the urge. Stressful meetings triggered the urge. Boredom in the afternoon triggered the urge. It wasn't random. It was predictable. And predictability meant power. Untangling the loop, the therapist explained, you can't erase a habit, but you can replace the routine while keeping the same cue and reward. So instead of lighting a cigarette with his morning coffee, Mark chewed nicotine gum. The cue was the same, coffee. The reward was similar, a sense of calm, but the routine was different. At first it felt forced, but slowly his brain began to carve a new path. Small wins, big changes. One day, Mark realized something. He had gone an entire morning without smoking, then a whole afternoon, then a full day. Each small win reinforced the new circuit. His brain was pruning away the old smoking pathway and strengthening the new one. This is neuroplasticity in action, the brain reshaping itself based on repeated behavior. What science shows Mark's experience matches what research tells us. Studies reveal that habits light up the basal ganglia. Breaking habits activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain linked to decision-making. With repetition, new routines become encoded, while old ones weaken. This is why change feels hard at first. The brain is battling between old highways and new dirt trails. But with practice, the dirt trails become highways too. More than smoking, Mark also learned that breaking habits isn't just about swapping routines. It's about addressing the deeper brain patterns. He practiced mindfulness, pausing to notice cravings instead of reacting automatically. Exercise, replacing dopamine from cigarettes with dopamine from movement. Support systems, surrounding himself with non-smokers who encouraged his progress. These practices didn't just distract him, they rewired the reward system itself. The setback. After 6 months smoke-free, Mark had a stressful day at work. Without thinking, he bought a pack and smoked 3 cigarettes in one evening. He felt devastated, but his therapist reminded him, a relapse isn't failure. It's feedback. Your brain slipped into the old pathway, but every time you return to the new one, you strengthen it further. Instead of giving up, Mark reframed the setback as part of the process. The turning point 1 year later, Mark realized something amazing. He no longer thought of himself as a smoker trying to quit. He was a non-smoker. The cravings had faded. The smell of cigarettes was unpleasant. His brain had rewired so thoroughly that the old habit highway had crumbled. What this means for you, whether it's smoking, nail-biting, phone scrolling, or overeating, your habits aren't destiny. They're circuits, and circuits can be rewired. Here's the formula. Identify the cue. What triggers the behavior? Replace the routine. Swap in a healthier action. Keep the reward. Make sure your brain still feels satisfied. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Practice until the new pathway is stronger than the old one. Remember, change isn't about fighting your brain, it's about teaching it a new pattern. Closing in citasso the next time you feel trapped in a habit. Remember, Mark. Remember that habits aren't chains, they're tracks in the brain. And tracks can always be rebuilt. If his story gave you hope, there are so many more like it. Stories of resilience, science, and the incredible ability of the human brain to adapt. Don't miss the next one. Subscribe to our channel and keep learning how to unlock the power of neuroplasticity in your own life.